They called me into the office on a Thursday morning. No heads up, no agenda, just a calendar invite titled, Meeting with Miles and Asha. I should have known right then. My name is Elliot Frost. I'm 55 years old, and I've been the head brewer at Hearthstone Brewery for the past 20 years. That place was more than a job, it was my life's work. Every award-winning IPA, every seasonal stout that flew off shelves, that was my recipe. My care. My hands. The office was too clean. Sterile. Miles Kramer sat behind my old boss's desk like he'd been born there, tapping one manicured finger against a sleek ceramic coffee mug. Next to him was Asha, some kind of consultant, glued to her tablet like she couldn't be bothered to look me in the eye. Miles stood up like he'd practiced it. Elliot, thanks for coming in. Let's get right to it. I nodded slowly and took a seat. I didn't say anything. Didn't have to. He smiled like he was on a game show. We appreciate your years of service here at Hearthstone. Truly. But the company is heading in a new direction, and, well, modernization is the name of the game. I blinked. You're letting me go. He didn't even flinch. We have to streamline operations. This isn't personal. But it was. Of course it was. My name had been on those fermentation logs longer than he'd been out of business school. I had calluses older than his resume. Asha didn't say a word. Just scrolled through her tablet, nodding slightly as if confirming boxes on a checklist. At one point, she glanced at Miles and gave the subtlest nod, a signal. That's when I knew. They already had someone lined up. Maybe a data engineer or a software nerd. Someone who'd never brewed a damn thing without instructions. I reached into my bag and pulled out the old leather-bound journal I'd carried every day for the last 2 decades. It was cracked at the edges, stained with hop resin, and filled with notes, tweaks, and secrets. The kind of stuff no spreadsheet could teach. I set it gently on the desk in front of him. This has every batch we've ever made. Every mistake. Every fix. Every success. Miles looked at it like I'd handed him a dinosaur bone. Appreciate it, he said, though he didn't touch it. I stood up. Didn't shake hands. Didn't say goodbye. Just walked out, past the awards in the lobby, medals I'd earned with my hands and heart. Past the break room where I used to sit with the junior brewers, trading stories and tasting experiments. It felt like someone had hit delete on everything I'd built. When I stepped outside into the cold morning air, I realized something. I wasn't just being replaced. I was being erased. I drove home the long way. Not because I didn't know the fastest route, but because I wasn't ready to walk into that quiet house just yet. I cruised past Main Street, through the historic district, where every other pub and taproom had a banner hanging in the window. Now serving award-winning Hearthstone Ale. Proudly pouring Frost's original IPA. Each one felt like a slap. I'd brewed those beers. Perfected them. Spent years getting them just right. The tang of the citrus hops, the finish on the red ale, the precise fermentation temp that gave the stout its silk. It was all mine. But now those banners might as well be headstones. At a red light near 9th, I looked over and saw O'Reilly's pub. I remembered the night we launched there. The place was packed, and the first keg of Hearthstone Pale went dry in 45 minutes. I didn't even drink that night. I just stood near the bar, watching people smile after that first sip. Rosalind used to say, "You're bottling happiness for people, Elliot." She'd say it every time I came home reeking of yeast and hops, shoulders heavy, hands sore. She made it feel noble, like I wasn't just making beer, I was making people feel something. I pulled over and parked for a minute. Just sat there. I thought about all the things I missed while chasing the next perfect brew. Our 20th anniversary dinner, canceled because the new lager was fermenting too fast. Jake's first art show at school, I sent a text instead of showing up. His teacher had called him emotionally vivid. I should have seen what that meant. Should have been there when he pinned that pastel drawing of a dragon on the wall. After the 2008 crash, I left the boutique brewery job in Vermont and took the offer from Hearthstone. The pay was steady, and Rosalind's treatment wasn't cheap. I didn't hesitate. I traded luxury brewing for practicality, for insurance, for a shot at keeping our life intact. And now it was gone. Rosalind, gone 5 years. Jake, off in Chicago with a kid of his own. And Hearthstone? They traded me in for buzzwords and smart metrics. This wasn't about skill. They didn't fire me because I couldn't keep up. They fired me because I reminded them of the past, a past they wanted to bury under QR codes and influencer campaigns. They wanted someone shinier. Someone cheaper. Someone who didn't know how things used to taste. As I finally pulled into the driveway, a thought hit me, sharp and cruel. I gave them everything, and they made me feel like I'd given them nothing. The messages started coming in before I'd even had time to brew a proper cup of coffee the next morning. The first was from Josh, one of the newer brewers at Hearthstone. He'd shadowed me for about 6 months, eager kid, solid instincts, but still green. "Hey Elliot, sorry to bother you, but do you remember the pitch rate we used for the spring lager? I can't find it in the system and Asha says just go with the textbook ratio, but something's off." I stared at the screen for a while. Thought about responding. Didn't. By noon, there were 3 more messages. 2 from Emma, the assistant seller manager, and 1 from Thomas in distribution. They weren't just reaching out with questions, they were sounding alarms. Fermentation schedules were off. The second batch of winter stout had stalled, and the lab flagged inconsistent gravity readings. The new guy, my so-called modern replacement, had apparently decided to adjust the hop additions based on a taste algorithm Asha had brought in. I couldn't even wrap my head around that. An algorithm. As if computers could smell the mash or feel when the yeast started to misbehave. A few of them tried calling. I let it ring out. I'd signed the NDA. Can't speak about internal processes. Can't interfere. They made sure of that in the exit paperwork. I couldn't even say the name of my own recipe if they hadn't trademarked it, and they had. Asha had been thorough. But sitting there in my kitchen, watching message after message pile up, urgent, confused, panicked, it dawned on me. Everything I had ever known, taught, perfected, wasn't in their database. It wasn't in some PDF manual or hidden in those sanitized files Asha curated. It was in my head. In the way I noticed when the air smelled just a little too sharp in the fermentation room. In the way I adjusted mash temps not by numbers, but by instinct and touch. You can't transfer that kind of knowledge with a clipboard. They thought they could replace 30 years of intuition with a software suite and a kid in a clean shirt. It's one thing to be fired. It's another thing entirely to be needed after you're gone and unable to help. I didn't reply to any of the messages. Just turned the phone face down on the kitchen table and walked out to the porch. It wasn't pride that stopped me from answering. It was clarity. They didn't just lose a head brewer. They lost the soul of their beer. And now, they were finally tasting the difference. It didn't take long for the cracks to go public. By the following week, Hearthstone's social media was flooded with angry comments. This used to be my favorite ale, but the last batch tasted like flat dishwater. What happened to the porter? Mine had chunks in it. Just opened a bottle of their signature red, smells like vinegar. They tried to spin it at first. Minor adjustments during our transition to smarter brewing methods, they wrote. Innovating for a better tomorrow. But anyone who had tasted Hearthstone before could tell something was wrong. Hell, it wasn't subtle, it was embarrassing. Then came the real blow, a viral post from a popular beer review site. The headline was brutal. What happened at Hearthstone? The fall of a craft icon. It detailed the drop in quality, cited anonymous employee leaks about rushed fermentation schedules, and recipes being rebuilt from scratch with no guidance. The article even mentioned me, not by name, but by title, the longtime head brewer who was let go weeks before the disaster. They didn't need to say my name. Anyone who knew beer in this state already knew who they meant. A few days later, I was watching the evening news with a cup of black tea when I saw it again. Local ABC affiliate, running a consumer alert segment. Hearthstone had issued a full recall on 2 batches of their golden ale. Contaminated kegs had made it into 4 distributors, 3 of them restaurants that pulled the beer mid-service after patrons complained of sour, cloudy liquid with a metallic aftertaste. The host ended the segment with a question. Can Hearthstone recover from this, or has the once proud brewery lost its flavor and its soul? I almost smiled. They thought they could erase me like I was some outdated cock. But now they were learning the hard way that you can't modernize passion, and you sure as hell can't automate good beer. Then, the phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't in the mood. 15 minutes later, it rang again. I glanced at the screen. Vera McAllister, head of sales. One of the few from the old days who actually respected the craft. Her voice on the message was calm, but strained. Hey, Elliot. Hope you're doing okay. I probably shouldn't be calling, but things are getting rough over here. The top brass. Well, let's just say they're not as confident as they were a few weeks ago. If you have time, could we talk? I didn't call her back. Not yet. I wanted to let them sit in it a little longer. Let them sweat. Let them watch the empire they thought they could run without me crumble under its own arrogance. For years, I gave them balance, patience, consistency. I brewed with my gut and fine-tuned with my heart. They replaced all that with data points and job titles. And now, every spilled pint and canceled contract was proof. Hearthstone wasn't brewing beer anymore. They were brewing disaster. It was a Thursday when the call came. This time, it wasn't Vera. It was Miles. I let it ring once, twice, just long enough to see the name flash and burn on the screen. Then I answered. Not because I wanted to. I just needed to hear how much pride he was willing to swallow. Elliot, he said, his voice forced casual, like we were old friends catching up. Didn't expect to hear from you, I said flatly. There was a pause, then a breath. Listen, I know things didn't end ideally, but we're in a bit of a situation over here, and you want me to come fix it? Well, he chuckled awkwardly. Not quite that, but yes, essentially. We're offering a consulting contract. Very generous. Triple what your old salary was. You'd come in, advise, troubleshoot the current brewing flow. Very limited engagement, strictly behind the scenes. I almost laughed. Triple. They must be hurting bad. Did Asha approve this call? I asked. There was another pause, just a little too long. She's aware. I leaned back in my chair, looking out the window at the small oak tree I planted after Rosalind passed. It had grown and crooked, but it was still standing. I appreciate the offer, I said slowly, but I'm going to pass. Miles cleared his throat. Elliot, be reasonable. This could help everyone, including you. I already have a job, I said calmly. I signed with Silverwood Brewing 2 days ago. Chief Brewing Officer. Independent. Owner-run. No consultants watching over my shoulder. They want me to bring the soul, not a spreadsheet. He went quiet. And before you ask, I added, there's no non-compete in my severance agreement. Asha must have missed that detail while automating your ethics. That got him. I could hear the little exhale, the one you give when you realize the cards are stacked the wrong way. You'd really help the competition? He asked. I'm helping someone who respects the craft, I replied. He didn't respond right away. Just let the silence sit there, heavy and awkward. Well, he said finally, if you change your mind. I won't, I said and hung up. I sat there for a moment, phone in my lap, heart steady. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt in control. They thought I was just some relic they could toss aside. Now they were the ones calling me for help. And I was already gone. The next time Vera called, I picked up. There was something in her voice, cautious, almost whisper-like. That told me this wasn't a casual check-in. I didn't call you as a rep for Hearthstone, she said before I could say anything. This is personal. All right, I said slowly. I'm listening. We met later that evening at a little dive bar off Route 12. The place smelled like fried pickles and spilled bourbon, but it was quiet and no one from the brewery crowd ever came here. That was the point. Vera looked tired. Not in the usual overworked way, but like someone who had seen something she couldn't unsee. I need to tell you something, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. I don't know what you'll do with it, but you deserve to know. She glanced around, lowered her voice. Miles didn't fire you because of modernization. That was the cover. I leaned back, arms crossed. Go on. She took out her phone, opened an email, and turned the screen toward me. It was a thread, internal company memos between Miles and some guy at a company called Drake Tech. Subject line, Phase 2, Transition Timeline. The dates lined up with when I was let go. They've been planning this since last fall, Vera said. Drake Tech is building a smart brewing platform. They want to automate most of the craft process, fermentation, hop schedules, even recipe tweaks, all AI managed. I frowned. And Hearthstone's their pilot program. Exactly. The goal isn't better beer. It's market domination. Consistency at scale. That's why they needed you gone. Not because you were outdated, but because you knew too much. You'd never let this happen. My stomach turned. So the whole streamlining thing. A lie, she said. They're selling out the brand under the table. That consultant, Asha? She's not independent. She's a Drake Tech plant. She's been feeding them data from the inside since day one. I rubbed my hands over my face. It wasn't incompetence. It wasn't even short-sightedness. It was a takeover. A controlled demolition of a brewery I helped build, all dressed up in buzzwords like efficiency and future-proofing. They think no one will notice, Vera said, her voice tight. But people already are. I looked at her and nodded. Then it's time someone said it out loud. 3 weeks later, I stood at the podium of the Northwest Craft Brewers Conference, looking out at a packed room. The lights were hot, the mic squeaked a little when I adjusted it, and the banners on the wall behind me were plastered with logos from some of the biggest independent breweries on the West Coast. Silverwoods was up there now, too, right next to names I used to admire when I was just a kid homebrewing in my garage. I cleared my throat. My name is Elliot Frost, I said. Some of you know me. I was head brewer at Hearthstone for 20 years. Keyword, was. There were chuckles. A few murmurs. They knew. Most people in the room had already heard something, but they hadn't heard it from me. I'm not here to rant about getting fired, I continued. I'm here to talk about what replaced me, and why it should worry every brewer in this room. Then I told them. I laid it all out. The email Vera showed me, the Drake Tech deal, the fake buzz about modernization, the slow and deliberate erasure of people who cared more about yeast cultures than quarterly margins. I showed slides, not a lot, just enough. A timeline. Quotes from internal memos. Financial statements that tied Hearthstone to Drake Tech's AI brewing subsidiary. I even dropped a bombshell at the end. A leaked memo Asha had accidentally CC'd to the wrong distribution list, stating plainly, by Q3, no human oversight will be needed in recipe calibration or production schedules. That got gasps. I paused. Let the silence settle. We're not just talking about job loss, I said quietly. We're talking about losing the soul of this industry. This isn't about beer anymore. It's about brand control. About removing the human element because it's harder to quantify, even when it's the very thing that makes craft beer what it is. When I stepped down, the room erupted in applause. Not polite clapping. Not conference lunch gratitude. It was loud, raw, almost defiant. A couple of my old Hearthstone coworkers found me in the hallway afterward. Emma hugged me so tight I thought I might bruise. "They've been trying to silence us," she said. "Thank you." By the next morning, my speech had been clipped and posted online. It spread fast, faster than I expected. Craft blogs picked it up, then beer influencers, then national food and beverage outlets. The hashtag started trending. Hashtag craft over code. Hashtag save our brewers. By the end of the week, the Oregon Bureau of Business Oversight had launched a preliminary investigation into Hearthstone's corporate practices, and a few distributors announced they were pausing orders until they had more clarity on the direction of the brand. For the first time since they kicked me out, Hearthstone wasn't controlling the narrative anymore. I was. And this time, they couldn't shut me out. Because now, I had a microphone. And the whole damn room was listening. 6 months later, Hearthstone made the front page of Brewers Weekly, but not for a new release. The headline was simple. CEO Miles Kramer removed amid automation scandal. It felt surreal, reading it over my morning coffee in Silverwood's break room. I sat there in my new office, smaller than the one I had at Hearthstone, but it had a view of the tanks and smelled like actual beer, and just let it sink in. Miles was out. Asha had vanished weeks earlier, once the investigations got serious. Drake Tech released a bland statement about restructuring initiatives and quietly backed out of their brewing pilot program. The whole plan had gone up in smoke the moment people realized they couldn't taste tradition through a touchscreen. Hearthstone's board moved fast to patch the damage. They brought in a new leadership team, one with actual brewing experience. Word got out that they'd started reintroducing old recipes. A few employees even called me to say they found my journal, the one I left behind, in a locked drawer. Untouched. Forgotten. But not anymore. I never asked for it back. Let them try to rebuild from it. It wasn't about the book. It never was. Here at Silverwood, things were different. They let me build my own team, real brewers, curious ones, not just clipboard carriers. I trained them the same way I learned. Through feel, through taste, through long nights and stubborn batches. We experimented, failed, adjusted, and failed again. But every time, we got better. And every batch had a piece of us in it. On our reopening night, we unveiled a new series, the Legacy line. The first pour? A bold, bitter red ale we named Rosalind. That evening, the tasting room buzzed with laughter and music, glasses clinking, people leaning in to savor the flavor like it mattered. Because it did. Because we made it matter again. Before the speeches, my new colleagues gathered around for a toast. I didn't prepare anything formal. I just lifted my glass and said, to beer that still remembers where it came from. And they raised theirs in return, smiling, not out of obligation, but because they believed in it too. I wasn't a relic here. I wasn't a dinosaur holding up progress. I was a master of my craft. Respected. Trusted. Finally, I wasn't just brewing beer again. I was building something real, a future that knew how to honor the past. And this time, it had my name on it.